Select Board meeting. I remind everybody that our meeting this afternoon is recorded, and we are meeting early because we are going to adjourn to attend the Acton Selectmen's meeting at 7 o'clock in the town of Acton. First order of business is the consent agenda. I will read that. Town accounts warrant, minutes from July 25th. Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee calendar of events. The Anthony Galbo proclamation to be presented and read at the retirement celebration September the 15th at the Trinitarian Church from 4 to 7 p.m. Gift acceptance, Middlesex School, $50,000 for the purpose of resurfacing the track at Emerson Field. That's the first of two payments, or the second?
It's the second.
Second,
of two.
so it's a total of $100,000.
That's right.
Dollars from Middlesex. We're grateful to them for that. Richard Presty of 66 Concord Ave, LLC, $1,500 to be used toward the future design and construction of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Friends of Concord Carlisle Fields, $50,000 to be applied to the maintenance expenses for the artificial turf on the grounds of the Concord Carlisle Regional School District. Carmen Jacquier-Lag, a $1,500 estimate, that is, in the form of water quality instruments and accessories for White Pond and other water bodies. A series of one-day licenses for wine and malt beverages. 480 Biomedical Company at September 27th from 12 to 4 p.m. at 269 Monument Street. That's at the Old Manse. 3 at Emerson Umbrella, the 23rd from 7 to 11 p.m., 24th from 7 to 11 p.m., the 25th from 2 to 6 p.m., all at 40 Stowe Street. A 6 for Saltbox Farm, September 22nd from 4 to 9 p.m., September 23rd from 6 to 10 p.m., September 26th from 6 to 10 p.m., September 28th from 6 to 10 p.m., October 1st from 4:30 to 8:30 p.m., and October 4th from 6 to 10 p.m., all at 40 Westford Road. Sunday entertainment license, Emerson Umbrella, 40 Stowe Street, September 25th, 3 to 6 p.m. And finally, extension of hours at Saltbox Kitchen at 84 Commonwealth Avenue on the 15th of September from 11 p.m. until 11 p.m. with last call at 10:30 p.m. The wheel is not part of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, they're passed. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The new finance director, Kerry LaFleur, started work today, and she has met with retired finance director Tony Lagalbo several times in the past, and will continue to do so on a regular basis. We have him on a contract for the next few months to smooth the transition. The water system was subject to vandalism over the weekend, as you have heard. Again, that same cabinet at the Pine Hill Reservoir the lock was removed, and doors were opened, including the removal of what we think is a 2,000-pound concrete slab was pushed off of the doors, so access was gained to the reservoir. There's no indication of any contamination. The reservoir was offline. It was refilling over the weekend, so we don't believe any of the water got into the system. But it's offline, and we're following the DEP protocols for bringing it back online. Obviously, we are planning to upgrade security at that location and our other water sources. We have a contractor taking a look at our security arrangements, and we'll step up the plans to implement tighter security measures.
And you did indicate that there were beer cans found and that they're going to be fingerprinted. And
The police department are treating it as a criminal investigation, and evidence is being collected. That's right. The water department, at the same time, reminds people that the drought is continuing. We have not received much rain, and this is all the problem we had with the reservoir over the weekend is all the more reason to continue the outdoor watering ban. I think the cooler temperatures have helped slow down far from where we need to be on an annual basis. So the outdoor watering ban continues.
I think it might be useful to maybe think about a communication strategy about that to the town, because I think there are a lot of folks in town who are probably unsure of just how far off we are. And the numbers are very scary once you actually see it. But I think that people who see, we all see a little bit of rain and a little bit of change, and you think, oh, okay, we're fine now. And,
Yeah, and I think the governor just upgraded, or the state just upgraded the drought conditions for several counties, including Middlesex
Right.
County, I believe. So
Neshoba Brook
it's a warning.
is a gravel pit right now.
And am I remembering correctly that the last case of vandalism there, we felt it necessary to drain the reservoir?
Did not drain. They did testing on the water, sampling of the
This
water.
time,
Wasn't,
but last time did
no, they didn't drain it then either. They tested the water. They thought it might be necessary, but it wasn't. It would have been a shame to waste that much
Yeah,
water.
sure.
And I'm from Emily Wheeler, thanking the police department for their help with Ag Day. That it went well on Saturday. I was not there, but Emily indicated that there was a good turnout and a good spirit, and was enjoyed. Warner's Pond, as you know, is experiencing eutrophication, and the Natural Resources Division is looking to consider dredging a portion of the pond. So the NRC is inviting the public to join them for a discussion of this on September 15th at 6 p.m. at the Harvey Wheeler Community Center to talk about the next steps of possibly improving the water quality at Warner's Pond. The police and fire departments had an open house this past Saturday. They had 300 participants attended. It was a great session opportunity for people to inspect the equipment and the vehicles and so forth. So, that was successful, and I think they may be considering doing it again. Public Works reminds folks that the repaving, resurfacing some of the roads at Sleepy Hollow Phase 1, so there's some work going on at Sleepy Hollow that may interrupt your visit there. Marriott Inn, the new Marriott Inn on Baker Avenue, got a temporary occupancy permit, so employees can be in the building, training and that sort of thing. I think they're hoping to be open in about 2 weeks for customers, so that's coming along. Reminder that September 20th is the election on the Minuteman Vocational School. That's being run by the Minuteman School District. And the Community Preservation Committee has its annual information meeting on September 14th. That's Wednesday at 7:30 at the Harvey Wheeler Center, and people have an opportunity to comment on what their applications might be, or gather any other information they might want to offer. And the deadline for filing applications for the CPA this year is September 30th. That's all I have.
I did have occasion to attend the Ag Fair. The weather looked pretty yucky early in the morning, but by the time the fair opened, it cleared right up, and it was terrific. And a lot of farmers were there, and mothers out front, and the Land Trust, and League of Women Voters, and all the usual suspects. A lot of good produce and flowers. So it was happening, and I had occasion to go over to the police and fire department for the public safety. That was a hopping place. I mean, all the adults were downtown there buying fruits and vegetables and flowers, but the kids were over at there, and I got there in time to see a police dog, a bomb sniffing dog demonstration. I think the chief had invited somebody from the MBTA to come out with their dynamite sniffing dog, and he gave us a demonstration. But it was, I thought it was just a huge success. It was packed, the cars up and down Walnut Street, so that was great. Other questions? Hi, Steve. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Questions for the town manager? All right. Chief, well, get you up here if you could, please. Welcome. Thank you. And this agenda item is to get a debrief from the chief on the tornado that we had on August 22nd. So, Chief, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss our response in
Steve.
recovery, thank goodness, from the tornado. Before I get started, I got to say about the open house that I think the adults were more interested in the fire trucks than the kids.
So the kids' word was really large and small children?
That's right. That's right. We're all kids.
They had an ID for what, I forget what it's called, but if a child is lost, Amber
Amber Alert.
alert thing.
Oh,
They
next
had
door. Yeah,
free
yeah.
ice cream. I think it was an ice cream truck.
free
they
ice
gave out
cream.
Free ice
We
cream.
know who had a lot of fun.
I had a blast. I had a blast. I thought it was a really good thing to do. Brought people in there, a lot of them, and it was
Yeah,
really
we'll
terrific.
definitely do it next year, and I like the idea of doing it after, at the same day they were doing the agricultural, because I know the police officers down there were promoting it
Yeah.
down there, and a lot of people came from there.
Yeah.
Down the street, so it really helped out.
Yeah, no,
So I'm going to be brief, but, which is unlike me, but I'm going to go over just the high points and hopefully entertain any questions that you have. And I think there's a couple of things I'd like to hopefully have you take away from this. One is that I think Mother Nature was very kind to us as far as tornadoes go. We had damage, but I remember a few years back, I took a task force of ambulances to Brimfield and Sturbridge for that event, and I know firsthand how much worse it could have been. And thank goodness we didn't have any injuries or any deaths. A lot of people's lifestyle and what have you were impacted, but could have been a lot worse. The other thing is the planning and practice that we do as a community for these events. I think, this is when it comes back to, this is payday. This is when it comes back to benefit us. And so we'll talk about a little bit about that. But actually, this was on the 22nd of August, and about 3:15 in the morning, I was sleeping like most of you, and my HAN alert, which is one of the state alerts, woke me up, and to a warning of a tornado in Concord, as well as other communities coming up, sort of seemed like over Marlborough, maybe Sudbury, that area, and then off to the northeast after I got through Concord. And so I called the shift commander on duty, and the shift commander was already aware of it, and he was monitoring. Now, these warnings, they come up with not much warning, no pun intended, and so. And many times, most times, when you get a tornado warning, it just means that they see that rotation. It doesn't mean the rotation's on the ground. And many times, it'll go right through your community, and it's nothing more than a severe thunderstorm. Okay, so I listened to the radio about 3:30. They got an alarm for the Wayside Inn, and that's a common thing. If you have that type of event, you're going to get this. So many times we get the alarms first, and then the phone calls start. And so on arrival, they found that that the fire department found that the road was blocked. We had poles snapped everywhere, trees down in the middle of the road. We had some damage to houses on Lexington Road, but knowing that there was a tornado warning gave us the first indication that maybe we had an issue here beyond just a localized event here. And so when we have a house fire, one of the things we do when we run our house fire is we do what we call as a 360. We go around the house when we first get there, because we want to know, even though I see the fire and the conditions on the front, we want to know if somebody's hanging out the window on the back, and then we set our priorities. Well, tornadoes are a different type of event, but the principles are the same. And the reason I talk about that is because we do something called initial damage assessment. And it's a process by which we do that 360, but we're doing it around neighborhoods. And we do two of them. We do an initial damage assessment, and then later on, that tells us, in a kind of a fast and dirty way, what we got, what areas are okay, what neighborhoods are okay, and we set our perimeters, okay? Then we do a secondary initial damage assessment, and that's a very thorough house by house, 360 of each house. And is there any damage here? Is there damage? Can I raise the owners? If I can't raise the owners and there's damage, I've got to access that house to search that house. So that's kind of that's the theory behind it. So our initial size up was the 400 to 500 block of Lexington Road was impacted heavily. And as they went around and tried to do what we call the size up or the primary assessment, they found that that they were totally blocked by getting up on the ridge, Independence Alcott Road, and also they had some on the way in. They had some damage in Cambridge Turnpike. Okay, so so they were on foot because you can't get any vehicles up there. They were on foot going through these neighborhoods. The concern here is access. Because if we do need to get in there for emergency reasons, the concern is electrical hazards. It's the middle of the night. We've got firefighters and police officers initially responding there, and they're going up and around all these 13/8 high voltage wires. Very dangerous situation when it's light out, when you can't see it's very, very dangerous. So, so those were those are the initial issues. 273, I think it was, Independence Road. We had a gas leak there. We couldn't access the area. We called National Grid, sent a company, when I say a company, it's a fire company, people assigned to one truck, sent a company up to by foot to evaluate the situation. Luckily enough, it was not a situation where we were gonna have an explosive event or anything like that. We set up, one of the things that the incident commander did was he set up, set up early and call resources early and often. And he instead of getting buried into the situation, he stepped back and set a command post up at the National Park parking lot on Hawthorne Road and Hawthorne Lane, and that's very important. I sent around this a handout. The second handout is our command post, and not the trailer on the left, but the command post on the right. When I arrived, we actually had 3 cars there, and we had one running the incident. Another car was safety and running all the safety stuff and concerned about the resources. And then the command post, my car, was set up for damage assessment. And I'll just hold this up. You've got the front map here. Okay, is part of what we call our chicker chart. And this is a critical resource chart that we have. I won't go through it, but it's a critical resource chart. And over here, we've got all the infrastructure in the town, septic system, sewer systems, the pump houses, hospitals. They're all listed here, and you see various tags throughout the town, okay? This is called a chicker chart. And we got abbreviation for everything. And so one of the things we want to do is we want to see initially what we've got our hands on. So probably the thing that really went well on that is we were ahead of the game when it came to assessment. And if you look at the top page here, you'll see I made some marks here, and this is just a picture before I erased it on this board here. And you'll see the arrow. We knew that the red areas, we know that those were hot. In other words, those were areas that we had damage in. And we knew where the storm was coming from. So we made a trajectory that gave us a broad place where we could paint our brush, this is where the highest likelihood of additional, because, tornadoes, they touch down and they come up and touch down again, so we wanted to know, if this was just this one area or did we have other areas, okay? And so the blue area here is just the outside perimeter. We still check, the police officers and some other resources check the roads on either side of the blue area and south of the blue area. We thought, educated guess of where our damage was, and it was where it was. So by doing an initial damage assessment, we found that, that there was 3 areas, primarily, mostly just the 400 to 500 block of Lexington Road and Alcott and Independence, but also Ripley School had some damage there. We didn't know how much. And there was some damage on Cambridge Turnpike. There was a tree that went through a greenhouse, and we had to make sure some propane was under control there, and some other smaller areas. But, so that was what our initial damage assessment told us. And then our secondary assessment is a methodical, we assign an area to each of the companies or each of the groups, and we give them a map of that area, and they go to each place, and they're on a separate radio frequency, and they assess each house, and any damage that they find, they radio it back in. And there's someone in the unified command post, I'll explain that in a minute, who is actually on a map like this, only it's a town map with the, like the tax maps. And they're making notes on each one of them. So at the end of, probably around 9:30 in the morning, maybe 9:45, we knew that we had 39 houses exactly that had damage. One was a little more substantial, and by damage I mean could be anywhere from the siding was ripped off it to we had damage to a pool on one house, an in-ground pool, and some vehicles. But they would radio it in. We know what we have. We've checked the rest of the town, and the reason I spend time on that is that's what's so important about a tornado. And if the tornado if we were unfortunate and we had houses torn apart, people trapped, then we would have set our priorities as such, and we would have called in the appropriate resources. Okay. The great thing about the town of Concord is the way the different departments work together. It's not like that in every community, but it is in Concord. I love being the fire chief in Concord, let me tell you. And we use what we call a unified command. And the unified command means that our command post, we have the different disciplines represented. We have the police department, fire department, CMLP is represented, the public works, and actually, fortunate for us, the director of MEMA lives in town, Kurt Swartz, and when I got there, I wasn't there for 10 minutes, and I looked next to me, and there was Kurt. So I would have called for resources anyway, but it was really wonderful to have him there and have him there with his radio and be able just to access those resources. We also got a trailer from MEMA, which sets up as an emergency operations center, so that when we have the helicopter from the state police, he can give an aerial view and downlink it right to that trailer. So we have an aerial confirming what our situation is. So that was terrific, and so the early on. You go through a response mode, and then you go through a recovery mode. So our response mode was fairly brief. It was maybe 2 or 3 hours, really responding and seeing what we got our hands on. And then the recovery, that consisted of we want to make sure we have access to the neighborhoods, emergency access first, and then we want to make sure that we've got access for the community. So emergency access probably by 9 o'clock. By 9 o'clock, maybe on Monday morning, we could get our ATVs and down any street, and small fire trucks down some of the streets, so that if we had a fire or another gas leak, we'd be able to access that area. We confirmed that our electricity was off, and then started to rebuild that. I've got it here. By the end of the day on Monday, I think all but 68 houses were restored. So all but 68 customers were restored. We had over 1,000 customers out. The light plant did a wonderful job, and they used mutual aid too, and it was just terrific. They had Middleton and Groton and Reading, Middleton, Groton, and Reading, all right, and somebody else, I'll list them, but they're coming in, and it's just the way they work together, it was just amazing. The DCR was there, and we got them there early, and honestly, calls were made early to these two tree services, Mare and Marquis, I think is how you pronounce it, and they came in with such a massive amount and quality of equipment. Honestly, we didn't use DCR because to put the two of them together would have been dangerous, because these people were just, I mean, they really knew what they were doing, and they were taking over, and the recovery was just great that way. I was amazed myself. I was looking at it, honestly, I thought we were 4 or 5 days, and we were about 2 days. And it was just
so impressive.
It was very impressive. So that's great. We had lots of help from lots of departments. I'd like, if you don't mind, just to, I'm in front of the camera, so just to name them. We went to a second alarm in Concord. The fire department does everything by alarm. So a second alarm, we recalled our staff. Bedford, Lincoln, Maynard fire departments came in. Western Ambulance and our own Samara, the Emerson Hospital ALS units, they dedicated a unit to us. The Department of Fire Services rehab unit came out to make sure that all the workers, not just the firefighters or the police, but all the workers were rehabbed. There's a organization called Worcester Box 4. And typically, it's a bunch of retired Worcester firefighters, and they come out with a canteen to disasters. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. And they came out and fed not only the fire and police, but I saw some light workers eating there, and it was just great. We had our district, our fire district, Car 14, has a communications unit, and I said that we were on 2 frequencies. That unit came in and set us up on a whole separate frequency so we could do our initial damage assessment. It was awesome, and it was critical to what we did. MEMA was there, a terrific job with their EOC trailer. What that gave us is, I say, a unified command and a forward EOC. So it was like having an EOC in the fire station, but we had it forward, so we had access to all those capabilities. We had the state police, the national park, the Concord police. The light plant was Groton, Reading, Wakefield, and Middleton, I think maybe I missed. And the building department sent out their inspectors. That was terrific. And Merrimack, DCR, and I think I'm all done with that. But our reviews from the different organizations, MEMA, and most importantly, our peers, because that's a matter of performance and a matter of pride, frankly. We're really outstanding. Having said that, I think the reason that this was organized okay and went okay is because we plan and we practice. Not only that, but one of the things we do is we do after-action reviews, not just on tornadoes. We do after-action reviews on car accidents, on anything substantial. And the idea is to look kind of with a bare look at your own organization and identify what went well, what didn't, and how we can make what didn't go as well, how we can make that better for the future. And we're serious about that. So I think that's, and we'll identify in after-action review, we're going to identify some things we could do better. I know there are some things. I've already got a list, but it really, from my perspective, as objectively as the fire chief emergency manager can be, I think that it really went well, and I'm proud of all the responders. I'm proud of the people out in the field, and I'm proud of the people that worked in the command post. It was a long, arduous thing, and no complaints from anybody. It was terrific. The town government, he's in front of me, he's my boss, but the town manager did a great job. He was out at the command post and supporting the organization as should be, and it was just terrific. Any questions? Because I could talk a long time on this.
Who was the incident manager?
I was the facilitator of the EOC, of the Unified Command, okay? So it was a unified command post, which means that if we were talking about, if we were looking at the tree removal, and we had, the tree removal was the issue, so then Rich Rain would have been so I'm organizing it, and there is somebody, I'm organizing it and facilitating it, but the great thing about a unified command is that you're putting that discipline in charge of that stuff, but in a coordinated way. So we'll sit there and say, well, what do you need, Rich? And Rich needs those lines out of there. So we look over and we just say to the light plant director, you know, how can we clear up that area? Because we got to get those roads opened, you know. So it's a unified command post. Captain Bill Noak was our incident commander for the fire side, did a terrific job, and really, I think, set up the incident so that by stepping back and taking firm control of it, he saved people, responders especially, from being hurt, and set up for a long-term response, which really worked well.
Were there any injuries of any of our personnel or?
None of our personnel. There was one tree worker. We made it about 24 hours into it without any injuries, and one tree worker was doing something with a chipper, and it kicked back on him. He had some trauma injuries, and we transported him. Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, is there any, I mean, it seems to me there were two parts, you more or less have answered, but the communication initially seemed to go quite well. I know our household got a phone message, and I assume pretty much everybody. Is that the sense that the communication on this type of thing, it works pretty well?
So here's my take on that. The communication, we've made some improvements. This is really under the police chief's purview, but again, we work on this stuff all together. Okay, so it very much has to do with emergency management, and you can sign up for these weather alerts, and as a matter of fact, the state will push out. Even if you don't sign up, we'll push out activations for these weather alerts to geographical areas. And, you know, how some people get them and some people don't, I'm not really sure. There's the system I use is the HAN system. It's a system for emergency managers, sourced at the DPH. But the Code Red, our reverse 911 system, we're the first community, and this is since then, but we're the first community to actually have people that can opt into that. So if they want to opt into a tornado warning or a flash flood, the third one might be a severe thunderstorm, I think, and they can opt into it, and I would encourage them to do so. And that's just another way to get the message out. I'll say this: there was a couple of people that, and you know, when you have these incidences, a minute is like 10 minutes. Okay, so I get it. You know, it's sort of like being at a fire as a firefighter and waiting for the first engine to arrive. Right. Okay, so but in the time that my alert went off, to the time that I talked to the incident commander and we got that call was roughly about 10 or 12 minutes. And, you know, it's an early warning system. Early is not real early. You know, plus, if you were to do that for every single thing, then you get the boy who cried wolf syndrome too. So you want to make sure people are able to get notified, and I think that was a really good comment from those people, and that's where the Code Red came from.
I know in our house we redid the batteries and all the smoke alarms, and
right.
You know, it's something that makes a big difference, and
yeah.
It sort of was a warning in that.
They can sign up for that on the town's website.
Yes.
And
Yep.
you had to sign up at your
We
public
did.
safety.
They could have signed up the other day. The other thing, that's also an item we're going to talk about further in the after-action review. We've done internally with the fire department, we've done an after-action review, and the draft is out. Now, within the next week or two, we'll do one at the SMT senior management level. So for our unified command EOC operations, we'll have just that type of critical look, and so make sure that we're learning from it. And
Another question I had, was there any equipment that you felt would have been beneficial that you didn't have that would be useful?
well, you know, I could name off a whole bunch of stuff, but honestly, I really don't think so. But I'll use the opportunity to say this about that, is that, you know, not too many years ago, we didn't have any ATVs. And then Middlesex School was generous enough to donate an ATV to the public safety. So we had an ATV that we had used for that. And most recently, we got a brand-new Kubota, the fire department ATV, which we just got tracks for instead of wheels for the winter, because we were all forever going out into the woods and picking up skiers and such, okay? So I think that in a large way, I think that this, a call like this really justifies or quantifies why you need something like that. And we use it for a lot of other little things. But, you know,
One time you need it that saves lives.
yeah, and it's reasonably priced. I mean, I could name off a whole bunch of stuff that you'd spend millions of dollars for, most of which I can, you know, we're well equipped, and most of which, the stuff I would be talking about, I can get from either MEMA or mutual aid. But I really think that, you know, maybe my final statement will be, you know, in emergency service, we look ahead a couple of blocks, not right what's in front of us, and we like to say that we play like we practice. So, you know, thank you.
Well, Chief, I wonder if you would be good enough to send an email to Chris or me with the list that you just read to us of folks who had participated in this. I know on behalf of the select board and the town, we're grateful to you and all the other members of your team and the other participants in this for all the hard work they did, and I think we would want to make sure that we were able to communicate that not just tonight, but in writing.
Right.
I think they'd appreciate
They
that.
did a great job,
That'd be
and they
terrific.
should be recognized for the work that they did. So if you'd do that, and Chris, you might make sure we've got all the towns that contributed to, and I would certainly entertain a motion from somebody that we authorize me to prepare.
I would
Thank you,
move that
Larry.
we authorize the select board chair to write appropriate letters of thank you to all those who assisted in this
All right,
emergency.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much,
You don't know
Chief.
how far that goes with these folks.
Well, they
Thank you.
did a great job.
Thanks,
so
Frank.
Hope we don't need it too soon.
well earned,
Hope
yeah.
not.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. The next item of business is municipal election for Boston Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization. That was in your packet. The town of Bedford is the town that is running for election in this cycle, and I've talked with selectmen in Bedford, and they've encouraged us for our vote, and I've indicated that we would likely do that, but that we would also perhaps be interested in being the representative next time this comes about. So I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the chair to cast the Concord vote for the Metropolitan Planning Organization's election, as we've just discussed.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. It's past 5:10, so why don't we have our public hearing for the change of management and alternate manager of record for the Concord Rod and Gun Club. Mr. Dan, so I get a motion to open the public hearing?
I move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Dane, good evening.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Henry Dane, the president of the Concord Rod and Gun Club. The Concord Rod and Gun Club holds a wine and beer license. All of the people who serve and manage it are volunteers who are members of the club, who work without compensation. And because of that, we have a group of about, is it a dozen or so tip certified? 17 tips certified bartenders, which turns out to have a collateral benefit in that whenever a nonprofit organization wants to run an event where they need people to serve who don't need to get compensated for it, we get called on to provide pourers or servers for those events, like the Chamber of Commerce, the Minuteman Arc, and the Rotary Club events, and so on. We've had a manager who was Charlie Anderson, who was, I think he joined the club when he was like 14 years old. And I remember he tells us stories about how he used to ride his bike to the club with his 22 rifle slung over his back in the days when you could do that. And anyway, he is retired recently, and he has been, we have replaced him with Dan Bojanic, who was the person that we have nominated to become the manager, and you have all the paperwork on him. And he is the house manager as well as the bar manager. And then we have here Bill Eldridge, who is the assistant house manager and bar manager, who has his initial paperwork, which you hold in case.
So he will be the alternate manager of record.
Alternate manager.
Okay.
And I do have a letter in my pocket that I was handed as I came in, which indicated that the police department has no problem with the,
Right, I have a copy of that too.
the appointment of these people.
Okay, just a couple of quick questions that I have. Manager of record, 30 hours a week during the time alcohol is served, is that you'll be complying with those hours? As long as alcohol is being served. I think the answer,
Hours that you were on the premises, are probably more than 30 hours, I would say.
and you are, in addition to the manager of record, you're the manager of the establishment, is that correct? Okay. Are all employees who serve alcohol over the age of 18? Yes. Okay, and have all of the employees who will serve alcohol had tips training? Yes. Right? And Mr. Eldridge, you are the alternate.
I'm the alternate
manager
board
of record.
But I would just mention that they are in fact not employees.
Right.
Right, and which is important for us in terms of the licensing and workers' comp and all those issues that come up with regard to the renewal of the license every year.
All right, questions from the board? Andrew, all of the records are in order for this, all right? No more questions for the board. I'll ask, are there any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Move to close the hearing.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, do we have any further issues or questions we want to discuss here? All right, well, I'd be happy to entertain a motion then.
I move to approve Dejan Bojanic as manager of record at the Concord Rod and Gun Club located at 74 Strawberry Hill Road. The manager must be engaged in the actual management of the licensed premise as his main occupation and must be present on the licensed premises for not less than 30 hours per week during hours when alcoholic beverages are sold.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Ring,
Move to approve William W. Eldridge as alternate manager of record, empowered to make decisions on behalf of the establishment in the absence of the manager of record at the Concord Rod and Gun Club.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I learned long ago that when you when you achieve your objective in an appearance, you leave as
Get out of
quickly as
town
possible.
fast. I will give you 10 seconds to get out of town here. Thanks very much, fellas. Thanks, Mr. Dane. All right, the next item of the business is a public hearing, Comcast poll petition at 1200 Main Street. And could I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good evening. I'm Greg Franks on behalf of Comcast.
Terrific. All right. What do you
So,
propose to do?
with your permission, we'd like to run overhead cable at the address 1200 Main Street across 4 poles from pole 112 to pole 15. The work would involve running new cable and removing any obsolete cable that might be there. I can tell you that our supervisor for construction has already met with an official from the light plant department, and I've had a look at the comments from the light plant and their suggested conditions for the petition, and we are happy to comply with all of those.
All right, we have that information on part of our packet. That's correct.
The memorandum dated September 7th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Those conditions were provided to the order.
Yeah, this is. And you agree to comply with all these conditions, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Mr. Chair, Jeff Cosgrove, engineer for the light plant, is here. If you have any questions about their
Do you have any
conditions.
comments that you would like to make, Jeff?
The only thing I'd like to,
Get up to a mic, just identify yourself. for the
sure,
record.
Jeff Cosgrove, the Town of Concord Light Department, electrical engineer. Thank you. The only thing I'd like to just point out as far as the condition is originally the pole numbers, they're identified on the petition plan. What starts at 112. I don't know if you guys all have a copy.
We have in our packet.
They're labeled 13, 14, and 15 sequentially. For the record, the numbers are 113, 114, and 115. So just to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
And we did meet with with Comcast in the field, and we have no issues or concerns with this particular petition.
Great.
I assume this is somewhat standard type
Sure.
operation.
Yes, absolutely, sir.
How long will it take to do?
It'll be very quick work, less than, a couple of hours.
Okay.
And no disruption?
I don't anticipate any disruption to traffic, but we, as a matter of course, will check in with the police department to see if a detail is needed. And, we follow all of the safety rules of the town.
And you've done this in other towns and
Done
have
here.
experience in doing
We
it.
do it all over the place, yeah.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much.
you.
Any other questions from folks, and nothing from the audience? All right, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing then.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any additional comments?
I move to grant permission to install overhead coaxial cable to be owned by Comcast of Massachusetts 3 along and across the Main Street Public Way in Concord as requested in the petition plan marked overhead cable placement request, Main Street, pole 112 to pole 15, Concord, Massachusetts, dated August 3rd, 2016, as noted in the order dated September 12th, 2016.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would just add it, probably we should just make sure that it's 112 to 115.
15, I'm sorry, yes.
And that's clarified by,
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Community Chest Proclamation, ladies. Good evening. Please identify yourselves for us.
Good evening. I'm Karen Bechtel, Executive Director at the Community Chest.
Hi, and I'm Trish Seifer, a board member of the Community Chest.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. We respectfully ask the Select Board to consider proclaiming October as Community Chess Month, which it has done very graciously in the past. The Chest has been serving Concord residents since 1947, and we grant about $650,000 to human service agencies within our community. This year, we gave $650,000 to 29 human service agencies that support Concord residents. Almost $100,000 of that grant money goes to positions within the town of Concord, such as the Community Youth Coordinator and the council, some positions at the Council on Aging and Community Services Coordinator. Some of our programs provide support for victims of domestic violence, senior services, substance abuse, food distribution, scholarships for children, legal services, adult and community education, and programs for those with special needs. We have some annual reports for you today. If you'd
Terrific.
like to pass those around.
And unfortunately, our 2015-16 annual report is at the printer right now, but those will be coming out in the mail probably this week.
Well, I hope you will make sure that we get one.
Yes,
Yes.
of course.
And I apologize for not knowing, but is there going to be a specific event that will commemorate the anniversary that you'd like to
Yeah.
tell us
In
about?
October, we send out our mailing. So the annual appeal goes out October 1st, and that, the proclaiming it Community Chess Month really helps us in our publicity. We have a window in the Concord Bookshop. We have an article often in the Journal. We make calls.
We're having a luncheon for women in philanthropy in October that is going to help kick off our annual campaign year. So we do a lot of little things out in the community, but it's really our chance to show our face to the community starting in October.
Well, the community trust has been a great supporter of the town, done a lot of terrific things for us, and we're grateful and congratulate you on another successful year.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we will be pleased to support your event by issuing a proclamation. If I could have such a motion, that'd be just terrific.
So moved.
So we
Second.
have already drafted the proclamation, and it's in the process of being signed, so all those in favor?
Aye.
That's good. Ladies, thank you very much for
Thank
coming.
you.
We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very
Very
much.
much. Thank you.
Keep up all the great work you do. Next order of business, I think, is the town manager's goals. And I sent you a note over the weekend just to indicate that we had originally teed this up. I'm sorry, did I mess up?
Special town meeting.
Special town meeting.
Oh. I wanted to make Mr. McBride sit in the back.
There we go.
I'm sorry, I skipped over that, so I'll go back then to the discussion of the proposed December special town meeting. And you, in your packet, and I have a copy here, we had a fairly extensive conversation about this at our last board meeting, and we had a proposed set of dates then, but they've been revised. And before we get into any comments or questions, I just want to go over the highlights of what we would be talking about. And that is that we would tonight, if we so vote, we would move to call a special town meeting on December 8th. The venue yet to be decided. I think we will wait to decide that until we see what the warrant looks like. I have met with the moderator to discuss various venues and the advantages and disadvantages of those, so I think we're prepared. We would also tonight, in addition to voting to call this meeting, if we so choose to do that, we would open the warrant. And opening the warrant tonight means that it would close on September the 22nd at 4 p.m. We would then go through the process of finalizing any warrants that would be available for the town meeting, and we would get material to the printer in October. And then we would hold, if necessary, hearings, both of the planning board and the finance committee and the select board, if necessary, in late November would be the 29th for the planning board, and December the 1st for the finance committee and select board. And then we would, of course, have the special town meeting on December 8th with a snow date on December the 12th, right? So that's the issue again is 3 potential warrant articles with respect to a development, Mr. McBride's development. So I'm happy to entertain comments or questions or.
Mr. Chair, just on the location, is it safe to say that the town meeting will be held at the regional high school, or is that is yet to be
I
determined?
think that's what, I think it's a simple matter of trying to anticipate the number of people that would show up. If we thought we could do it either here in the townhouse or maybe at Alcott School, it would be logistically less complicated. But on the other hand, if it looks like we're going to get a larger attendance, then we would have it at the high school, and the moderator has indicated a strong interest in having it in the gymnasium. And for her, the interest there is that then we would set aside the cafeteria not as an overflow space in the sense of voting, but as overflow space that would have audio and visual elements that they could see what was going on, but there'd be no voting there, and people could eat or just chat or whatever they wanted to do. So we'd be practicing that. And she and I spoke. If it's going to be a large enough turnout, we anticipate we'll go there. But if it's a small turnout, we won't get any kind of a test of whether that works. So we try to be economical with the cost of the town meeting and do it in a smaller venue. So I think we'll wait until the warrant closes and we see what we have to contend with, and then I can meet again with the moderator, and we could figure it out. Is that
Great, thank you.
reasonable? All right. Other comments or questions?
No, I think this timing works with town offices, right? The
It does,
staff?
yeah.
Yes, that's great.
We've checked religious holidays. We don't see any conflict with any religious holidays. Thursday's a little bit unusual, but it was driven by the fact that if we were to do it on the Tuesday or earlier in the week, the last day for registering to vote for this, to participate in the town meeting would have been the day after Thanksgiving, which might have been inconvenient for people, so that's why.
We did have an earlier proposed date for this, and in conversations with Chris, the town manager, the town finance director and the acting town clerk, is when we suggested we move it to December 8th. Any comments from the public? Andrew?
Just want to say on the draft for the motion, make sure you don't say October 27th, you say September 22nd.
For closing the warrant. And let's make sure that we are very clear in publication of the opening and when the date is closing, so that we're transparent with Concord.
Yeah, well, if we do this, we'll open the warrant tonight,
Right.
and the warrant will close September 22nd at 4 PM. So that's the window that folks would have if they're interested in. All right, so if there's no further discussion, then I certainly entertain a motion.
I move to call a special town meeting on December 8th, 2016, and to declare the warrant for the 2016 special town meeting open on September 12th, and to close the warrant at 4 PM on September 22nd, 2016. All articles must be turned into the town manager's office on or before that date and time.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now we go to the town manager's goal. And again, I will say, we were going to do both goals and performance evaluation, but because we're trying to make sure we get over to Acton on time, I just said we put that off and do that at our meeting on the 26th. So, Mr. Town Manager, do you want to go over these with us? How would you like to proceed?
Let me see. I've drafted my goals based on the board's earlier action to approve your own goals. I've added some things that relate to departmental operations as a reminder. So I think that, for the most part, these goals should reflect yours. So the making a comprehensive long-range plan a priority for this coming year. One thing I will say is that we should get clear on what the resources the committee's got a big job, and it'd be helpful to be clear on what resources are expected. We have an appropriation of funds that would publish the long-range plan report and a facilitator. So we have, but I would just stress the importance of communication, and because not having people communicating with individuals and not the whole group understanding what's happening. But
So could you perhaps prepare just a small note that
Sure. Yep.
articulates that, and we could get it to all of us and
Right.
Yep.
Finance Committee and to the Long-Range Planning Committee and the town offices, and then we all have it on record and we're all done.
And I'll note that on effective governance, item 2, promote transparent government and enhance use of technology and CCTV coverage. That is also part of the League of Women Voters, I think, effort to hope that more public hearings and more committee meetings are covered. So I've tried to reflect that in my goals as well. We do have some retiring, long-serving staff that will be a challenge for me to find replacements for. And that's just the way it's going to be for the next few years for many towns in our area. It's just you have senior staff that are retiring after a long period of time. So I think the goals are self-explanatory. I've had specific sustainability goals, hopefully measurable, so you can measure our progress in June or July and see how we did. And then I trailed off there at the end on regional and state goals, so I welcome the board's input on anything in that area.
Chris, sort of related, in the transparency idea, you might mention that a little bit about the new website.
Yeah, that was one of our goals, is to improve communication with the public and interactive communication. Sean, the public information officer, Sean Duggan, and Kate, the assistant town manager, worked very hard the last 3 months or so. They did solicit public feedback early on as to what the public might find more useful, and rolled out the new website this week, intended to be easier, particularly with people with mobile devices, your phones and your iPads, to access the documents that we're referring to in our messages. And so far, the response has been good. They know that there are some old links that may turn out to be a dead end, and we're welcoming people to comment, and they've received a few comments, I think 5 or 6 comments of people who would find one thing helpful, and so they're taking that advice as to how to make the site more useful.
Well, it's really not part of the goals here, but I would hope that you would, I know there was a committee of, I don't remember exactly, 10, 11 folks in the town
Yes.
who worked on this over a very long period of time, and to both Sean and Kate and this committee, I hope you would extend our
Absolutely.
thanks and congratulations. It looks terrific.
Yeah.
I've heard positive feedback.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's got the normal kind of hiccups that you get anytime you roll
exactly.
out
Right.
something that's complicated as that. And I think the next step for us now is we have a much more functional website. Now the question is, can we really exercise that website to drive these transparency goals that we talked about a little bit? So one of the things I'll be doing that will be supportive of that is you remember last year we had a committee training
Right.
for committee members. Well, we're gonna do that again. It's gonna be abbreviated, most likely ethics, open meeting kind of stuff. A general session that last time was called What Could Possibly Go Wrong? And then roll in with something about the web, not just training, but capabilities. And I've written to Kate and Sean to suggest that we get this ball rolling, so.
I also think that having the town staff associated with a lot of the different committees ready almost to practice with some of the committee members, having just had a long-range planning committee meeting last Friday, we went through by accident, an exercise that was really about the fact that most of the documents being discussed were accessible. But there is just not a practice of accessing them. And sometimes showing is,
whether motorized vehicles were gonna be able to be used on the Bruce Freeman
Right.
Trail. And I was able to go back and look at some things
Right.
and find that the original vision said no. And then they modified it to allow for motorized wheelchairs, but it was clear that otherwise it wouldn't be permitted, so. It was helpful.
Great.
So other comments or questions or whatever?
I guess the
you
only
have?
one I would make is the expanded issue of kind of water safety and access. I mean, this year has been unusual with the drought, but we've also had the other issue with the reservoir and other things that, it's a broader issue, I think, than just Nagog Pond. And there seemed to be some confusion or, I want to say, a little bit of ill will between those who have wells and those who are on town water in terms of the use of well water and that type of thing. And I'm not sure if everybody's clear about how that operates.
well, I think that's a good point. In fact, I've been approached by a number of folks in Concord asking what the range of Concord's authority is in terms of those who have private wells versus public water, since the common understanding is that really it's one, we live in one space.
Right. It's all the same
Whether you
aquifer.
paid to drill,
Yeah,
it's
yep.
still coming.
Yep.
So I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And just to answer that question, a private well has to be licensed by the Board of Health to be sure it's sanitary for domestic consumption. But the town doesn't otherwise regulate that. The state, I think, would very much like to see towns exercise some regulatory authority over private wells, but at the moment, we don't.
That may be something we need to look
I wouldn't be
into.
surprised if we heard some,
The state
Move
knows that
towards
there's a
that.
lot of consumption happening that's not going on the records because the municipal
Have we
water
made our
departments are.
views known to Senator Barrett or Representative Atkins? I mean, is that something we should be pursuing?
It's something that it would be worth discussing. I think the water department doesn't, they have their hands full with the public
Yeah,
water
sure.
supply, so they don't really welcome having to take that on as well and perhaps give bad news to private property owners, what have you. But at some point, whether it's Board of Health staff or other public works staff or other staff, it makes sense. It is just one aquifer generally,
Yeah.
and to have everybody using it.
Well, I wasn't suggesting anything specific, but to sort of get the issue on the table so that
Right.
we could talk about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's
Find
a
out whether or not
sustainability
there is
question.
anything
it's going to
pending.
come right into the long-range plan.
All right, thank you, Tom. Others? One of your things under balance, equity, and diversity is the phase one of the parking plan, and I think you might even have an update.
Marcia is planning to visit you, come to your next meeting, Marcia Rasmussen, the planning director, and describe to you the phase one implementation, the capability of the meter heads, that we do have a new meter head, we've ordered them, and posts as well, so it'll be black posts, and we sort of have a variety of different looks to our meters and posts, and we're gonna get some uniformity, and they'll take credit cards, and they'll have a pay online feature. You'll have to download the app, but you'll be able to use your phone to pay parking meter charge. So she'll be in next week, in your next meeting on the 26th, to describe that.
Okay, that's good. The general question, I thought this was good, and I think you're correct, these align well with what we're up to. Where can we be most helpful to you? I mean, it's a long list, it's a big plate full of stuff. Are there particular issues on here where the select board?
To me, it would be helpful, as Tom mentioned, water was the area of interest. I think to mention what areas you think are priorities and to remind me throughout the coming year, to be sure if I'm reporting on some of these goals, but not all of them, to just check in and make sure. Priorities do shift a little bit. As circumstance, you have a drought. Weren't really planning on that in the spring, and so that has a way of changing where the staff is spending its time, where we're spending our money. So I just would ask you to stay in touch, I guess, on whether these priorities remain the priorities throughout the fiscal year.
Other comments, Steve? Are you all set? Jane? Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. And then we'll pick this back up at the 26th meeting if we've got time. That looks like it's going to be a pretty packed meeting, but next item is very, very, very brief. 11, discuss potential changes to Select Board Clinton communication. I have been coming in, so some of you, but others haven't. I've tried to relay to you when there's anything I thought is important, ask Andrew, or sometimes I've just done it myself and put stuff and sent it to you. So keep me posted if you think that's working or you're not hearing enough. I have briefly met with Chris and Sean about one of the things we wanted to do was see if we could get podcast of the select board hearings that could be, indexed. So that, if you wanted to know what item 11, wanted to go to 2 minutes and 29 seconds. And so we're working on that. That shouldn't take too awfully long. I know there's software. So next, letter to business regarding polystyrene ban. So we have the charge done to polystyrene. We're going to actually make our first appointment tonight. Ta-da! To that. And so, Chris, do you want to help us out with this letter?
I'll just mention that Rod Robinson, the solid waste and recycling coordinator, his title is a little different from that, but he was made responsible for enforcing the plastic bag ban that was implemented last year. And the schedule that he followed, which he found helpful, he sent out a preliminary notice last September to business owners, reminding them that in January you won't be able to use plastic bags. And then in December, he had another follow-up meeting, got more questions as that deadline got closer. So he thought it was helpful to give people an early reminder. He didn't get a lot of questions after the September letter, but when the December letter reminder came into them about the January, the more people got involved and they were paying more attention. So he recommends that we let people know, again, around this time. They probably won't pay a great deal of attention until December is upon them, but at least we're giving them a fair notice. So Rod drafted this letter, just no pride of authorship or whatever, but he suggests that we send something like this out to just remind folks that town meeting voted in April to ban polystyrene effective January 1st, but with fines and penalties to take effect on July 1st. So I think reminding people, communicating early and often makes sense.
And there'll be a full description of what that means, because polystyrene, a plastic bag is a fairly well-known
Right, it was
thing.
a simple, this is more
But
complicated.
this is much more complicated, yep.
Might it also say that, letting folks know if they haven't heard about it elsewhere, that we have a structure to create a committee. And hopefully we get this committee staffed so that yet another kind of communication might come out from the committee before the end of the calendar year. But perhaps this letter could indicate that the committee is being formed, that citizens should expect to hear more about this from the committee as it gets, I don't think it has to be long, but I'd like folks to know that there is this committee and we expect them to be communicating with businesses as well, more information probably be forthcoming and the like.
Do we have any sense of how many of the establishments have already transitioned away from?
They are beginning to. I know Main Street's Cafe, where I get coffee pretty regularly, has used the new kind of lid that's compostable. And
For
not
everybody,
poly-
not for you.
Yeah, right. And I got a salad in a paper container rather than the plastic container. So I know some of the establishments are already converting.
And am I correct that I'm going to send this letter out?
This was, I think Rod drafted it to go out from me, but if you'd like to.
No, I'm just reading what it says here.
I thought he,
Or town manager.
Yeah,
Well, let's
yeah.
just make that clear.
and I'm happy
You can
to.
reach over here and scratch out that word that says chair.
It's all Chris.
Okay, other comments about it? Okay, so I would entertain that motion as amended by me with my little
To
pen.
authorize the town manager to sign and transmit letter as drafted to Concord businesses.
For a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Miscellaneous correspondence, I don't have any that I haven't already shared with you. I don't know whether I mentioned it, somebody can help me, that we'd gotten a letter from Ms. Detweiler, concerns about some signage at the old manse. Did I mention that at the? I did? Okay, so I won't mention, I just couldn't remember. Otherwise, no. So committee liaison reports. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Committee liaison reports. Tom?
Again, there was a meeting on August 18th, so we've had quite a gap between the last select board meeting and tonight's meeting, where they reviewed the notice of the public hearing, and then they held the public hearing on the 8th. There were about 25 people attended. I think it was very positive, well-run, and already have gotten some interesting feedback. Somebody's put us in touch with Cambridge, apparently has had drafted some form of public-private sort of standards. So I think they're moving ahead and planning on proceeding to draft sort of their response according to what the select board requested, and they'll have another public hearing in probably early December, and then they're on schedule for making their report in that regard. The Committee on Disability has met a couple of times. There's progress on access to the pools at the VD Center. There is an issue apparently on the Ripley Gym polling station. They're going to send me a photograph of, there's apparently a hindrance for people in wheelchairs there.
It's the threshold.
And
too steep,
they've
I
had two groups appear before them who are seeking funding from CPA, and they wanted to get the support of the Disability Committee. And I think that's a good process of these agencies that want to get funds from the CPA to go and to try to get support from different groups, because they particularly have to do with access and public access. The Bruce Friedman Rail Trail Committee was canceled due to a lack of quorum, but they will be meeting. And the Board of Assessors also was canceled due to lack of quorum. The Historic District Commission met on the 1st, and they had two major, one was a discussion of 12 Bow Street, and the other, the Concord Museum project, and those are continuing, and I think they've gotten input from the commission and are going back and redrafting, reformulating their plans based upon that.
Great, thank you. Jen?
Briefly, quite a few of the committees I liaison to had canceled meetings in the end of August, beginning of September. The NRC had a couple of relatively straightforward meetings. The Cemetery Committee met last week, and once again, the drought was interestingly described because there are a number of tree planting intents that they've had to put on hold. They were really commenting on the fact that from a horticultural perspective and from a cemetery's sort of a stewardship perspective, they're being very cautious to do anything at all because there are several trees, there are a number of shade trees in the cemetery that have lost all their leaves already. That, along with the fact that they're doing the construction up on Author's Ridge right now, which is creating a lot of dust and a lot of other, it's moving forward well, thanks to the funds appropriated by town meeting. But they also were concerned that any tour buses coming through right now might not have the same, goes back to accessibility, access to Author's Ridge
Yeah.
during this construction period, and they're looking at ways to communicate that. The Estabrook Wood Committee has been moving along. It's, I think they've been working very diligently on really fleshing out all the different points of access to Estabrook Woods. and looking at the parking options potential in all those spaces. It's a very impressive committee. There's a lot of, as many different viewpoints as are represented, there's really strong goodwill at the committee, which is, it's a nice place to be. The Comprehensive Long-Range Planning Committee had the benefit of meeting here last time, and everybody really appreciated the comfortable chairs. I think that was the, but there was also an acknowledgement that sitting around in this configuration made the conversation much, much, much stronger. We have had a committee member resign from the Council of Aging, and that's going to be really important. Tom, is that you? Are you the liaison to the Council? If we could, that's going to be a really important voice to put in right away. Murray had been missing.
Did Alice send?
Yeah, but I want to make sure it was brought up to my attention that we should really ask the Council of
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, they seem to meet Monday nights, the select board meeting, so I haven't.
Right, and that, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we get a
But
a
would you
name or two
take the
right away.
initiative to bring that nominee to their attention?
Yes.
Right.
And so if it works, we
Yeah.
can get it done.
Absolutely. So,
Thank you. Steve?
No, I have nothing.
I had two quick ones. I'll be very brief. Attended the school committee meeting on September the 1st, a Thursday meeting, which was unusual, I think probably because of Labor Day. Number of items. They were getting budget requests ready to come before Miller's committee. Coming up, I don't remember the date, but it must be relatively soon, right? And so too my chores, Mr. Town Manager, right? Don't you have an impending date with the folks? Items that they discussed, moving forward with the superintendent search, that seems to be on track. Land remediation, you might recall that they had proposed to go out to a firm to get some estimates about what various kinds of caps would be like on there, so that you could think about what the future might hold with no idea of what the future would be, but worrying about the cap. That was good. They discussed the later start time for the committee, and that's a real complicated issue for them. And so they're moving ahead now to kind of get their handle on all of the items that would impact that, including its cost. I also attended the Ag Committee meeting, relatively straightforward meeting. They were getting prepared for the Ag Day, which was Saturday was a big success, and Sunday they had a lot of events. I went over to Hutchins, and it was packed over there, and I went over to Barrel Farm. The place was, crazy. There were hundreds of people out there and tractors on the field showing people around. It was really terrific. That's all I have. One thing before I ask for public comments, just a reminder to everybody that 6 o'clock on the 20th, we have an executive session here, so just a reminder of that. So if we go now to town manager appointments.
Mr. Chair, members of the Committee on Disability are appointed by the town manager subject to confirmation by the board. So respectfully request the board's confirmation of the appointment of Nora McShane of 32 Bedford Street to the Committee on Disability for a term to expire on May 31st, 2019.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
And the same is true of the members of the Comprehensive Sustainable Energy Committee. So I request that the board approve the appointment of Janet Miller of 1647 Main Street to the Comprehensive Sustainable Energy Committee for a term to expire May 31st, 2019.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Approved. Thank you very much. Committee nominations?
I nominate Scott Richardson of 260 Elsinore Street to the Polystyrene Education and Outreach Committee for a term to expire January 2017.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. I will note that we have 2 members of the public for that committee, so we still need folks interested to get the green cards on, and then we have representatives from various town departments, so I hope we can get that done. We will now adjourn to reconvene at the Acton Board of Selectmen meeting. Do we move to do that, or do we just do it? All right? So somebody,
So moved?
So moved.
second?
Second.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's